My name is Lars Schall. I am an independent financial journalist from Germany. And as a financial journalist, I became interested in the attacks of 9/11 because there is a financial angle to it and an economical angle, a geopolitical angle. I don't think that a good analysis of economics and finance can happen without a good geopolitical analysis. And basically I was talking here at this conference about alleged insider trading prior to 9/11, undertaken by those in the know. But who? I don't know. Well, first of all, you become aware that there were a lot of reports in mainstream financial media going on after the attacks that were talking about the possibility that there was insider trading going on. This was then happening in autumn and winter of 2001-2002, and then all of a sudden those stories disappeared and they never surfaced again. However, when you take a critical look at the topic, you will find out that there was never really an investigation going on that I would take serious, a real forensic investigation. And what the 9/11 Commission and the SEC said about it has to be seen with lots of doubts, because there are actually scientific papers from respectable scientists saying that there was indeed insider trading going on. But again, by whom, I don't know. When you take a look at those purchases of put options, and in one case of call options, you have to take into consideration that not all of those purchases were undertaken by the insiders. There was indeed a piggyback trading going on after the initial trades. And in this regard, for example, the book that I have told about by Jim Rickards is correct. You also become aware of the fact that a lot of the purchases was going on at Alex Brown in New York, and that the CEO of that firm resigned from his post the very next day, on September 12th, 2001. And for example, what I wanted to know, because I have never seen an explanation, was to know from this gentleman why he did so. And I never received an answer to this question, so it remains unknown. I also talked with Max Kaiser about the topic, and he experienced, or he knew about those purchases undertaken by brokers at Cantor Fitzgerald, which is a major bond broker, that they purchased themselves, so those options related to the airliners that were involved in the 9/11 attacks. And so the word was spreading, I think, and this is very important. The topic is important because the official version of 9/11 says, "Oh, we have never seen this coming. This was a completely surprise." Now, if the insiders of those trades were not what Jim Rickards calls terrorist associates, but people, for example, from the intelligence agencies in the US or global, when this would be the case, then there was a lot more foreknowledge than is admitted. And of course, you could track down those who bought options, not just on those airlines as Jim Rickards suggests, but on other companies as well. Maybe you would find out who were the perpetrators of the 9/11 attacks. So this is why it is important. For example, if you take a look at the footnote that the 9/11 Commission gives you in Chapter 5 related to the 9/11 insider trading, they tell you that it never took place, actually. And they tell you what they did But if you really take a look at the documents that are the foundation for that footnote, you will find out that they actually did very little. For example, they did not examine the trading going on in the S&P 500, which lists all 500 the 500 major US companies traded at the New York Stock Exchange. However, a scientific trio looked at this S&P 500 and the option purchases going on prior to 9/11, and they concluded that there was insider trading going on. So it contradicts the finding of the 9/11 Commission. And I think those three scientists are more independent than the 9/11 Commission was. It was not an independent commission. And there was not an independent investigation going on. Well, I have shown in my presentation that there's a study that came to the conclusion that 25% of all the footnotes in the 9/11 Commission report are based on tortured testimony. Like, for example, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the alleged mastermind behind the 9/11 plot. Now, how reliable is such testimony? I mean, we can do some private sports activities of Dick Cheney. We can waterboard me, and I will tell you something about my connection to 9/11 that I'm not aware yet. But I will come up with some stories. And so I don't think that it's really credible. You shouldn't base your judgment on those torture testimony. And of course, the commission never had access to those detainees. They never had access to those interrogators. And there are reports that the transcripts that they received, those transcripts are based on videotapes of the interrogation, and there are reports that those tapes were destroyed. And it's always very, very suspicious if evidence gets destroyed. And you stumble across it all the time when you take a critical look at the 9/11 story, because this also happened related to the 9/11 insider trading when it comes to the SEC. The SEC destroyed the material that the 9/11 Commission used in order to come to its conclusion. So this is an anomaly. Well, if you go back in time and take a look at the relationship between the CIA and Wall Street, you will find that there's not just a revolving door between the US Treasury and Wall Street, but also between the CIA and Wall Street. Lawyers and investment bankers in New York were very crucial for starting or setting up the CIA. And they draft basically the bill that created the CIA in 1947. And when you go through the history of the CIA, you will find a lot of people from Wall Street working at the CIA or going from the CIA to Wall Street. And I would recommend that the people who watch this interview take a close look, for example, at the book The Road to 9/11 by Peter Dale Scott, published at the University of California Press, which tells you some basic facts about it. If there was evidence for the insider trading by terrorist associates, and if you would know the names, if there was really hard evidence for this claim, you would need to prosecute this because it's connected to mass murder. This is just not ordinary insider trading going on, for example, related to mergers between two companies. This is connected to mass murder. And when when a murder is happening, you always need to prosecute it, even 30 years after it happened. And this is why this needs to be done here, because the people traded on their foreknowledge that the attacks would happen instead maybe of preventing those attacks. So they are responsible in a way for it too. The notion that Osama bin Laden had something to do with the 9/11 attacks is based in general on the so-called confession tape that the Pentagon released in 2001, December of 2001. I think you have to be very skeptical about this. And one reason is the FBI has a most wanted list of the US, people that they try to find and prosecute. They, of course, try to find Osama bin Laden, but they have never ever tried to find him related to the 9/11 attacks. And when they were asked about this very surprising thing, in 2006, they told that they are not connecting bin Laden with 9/11 because they have no hard evidence connecting 9/11 and bin Laden. So why should you? Ask yourself this. Why should you connect bin Laden with 9/11? What evidence do you have? Well, basically, I'm interested in facts, and I follow the facts wherever they lead. Maybe I'm not... maybe I don't like the direction I am led to, but I am loyal to the facts as a journalist. I am not loyal to any kinds of groups or interests. And so this is basically what I'm doing. I will never ever make any kind of speculation who commit 9/11. I don't have to. This needs to be prosecuted. There needs to be a real investigation. However, if I would be an attorney, I think I would know some persons of interest that I would like to talk with. For example, one would be Richard Blee, B-L-E-E. He was the head of the CIA's bin Laden unit. And it's very interesting because there was the case of two of the alleged hijackers that were sitting in the plane that hit the Pentagon, Al-Mida and Al-Hazmi. And it is beyond the shadow of a doubt that the CIA protected those two terrorists vis-a-vis the FBI. And if the FBI would be aware of those two guys, they would basically know about all the others. And I think 9/11 would never happened the way it did if the CIA would not have protected those two guys from Saudi Arabia.